Good to see you all. This is the 1 year since Lama Zopa Rinpoche took the aspect of passing away, as Jennifer just reminded me, on April 13th. What did you say, 9:30 in the morning in Kathmandu, something like that. So we're going to have our own little short, I'll just give some remembrances of Rinpoche from my own experience, and we will recite his the prayer for his quick discovery, the rediscovery of his reincarnation, both at the beginning and the end. And we'll also end about 10 minutes early because there will be a ritual that Venerable Katie Cole will be leading, co-sponsored by Thupten Norba Ling and Shantideva Center. That will start at 3. So usually we slip past 3 a bit. So we'll try to end about 10 minutes to 3 today. So if Anna would put up the prayers, most of you know them by heart, our beginning prayers. Oh, look at this. Okay. Okay. Sangye churang soki chognam la changchu bardu dagni kapsu chi dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, such as what we're doing now, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings. Sangye churang soki chognam la jangchu bardu dagni kapsuchi dagi chunen gipe sognam ki drola penche sangye drupa shok. Then a short mandala. Visualize our solar system, our Earth, our solar system, multiplied billions of times, transformed into a pure land, a Buddha realm that we, to make a more powerful offering. By offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy such a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Okay, good to see you. We're going to do just short meditation to quell our conceptualizing minds, first of all, so we're a proper receptacle for hearing the teachings, and also to set the motivation again after the prayers in the way that we've been doing, thinking of the various factors. So sit comfortably, relax your body, relax your mind, nothing else you have to attend to. Recognizing the respiration, focus your mindfulness upon it to the exclusion of everything else. Recognizing simply when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out, whether it's a long inhalation or short inhalation, long exhalation or short exhalation. There are probably some days you need more than 13 or 21 respirations to calm your mind. There may be some days when you need less. But having slightly calmed the body functions and the mental ramblings, place your attention now on the more subtle object, more subtle than the respiration, meaning the mental consciousness, bringing your attention inward like a turtle or tortoise pulls in its head and legs, maybe tail also, like drawing away from the five senses, not paying attention to your eyes, ears, nose, tongue consciousness, or body consciousness. Just focusing on the mental consciousness and the contents therein. And recognizing between the thoughts, between the images, the memories, the plans, the observations, some spaciousness. Be focusing on the contents of the mind and refocusing on just its basic substratum, its clear light nature, even where the thoughts are present, recognizing the nature of the mind is clear light. Otherwise, that thought couldn't be present. See if you can prolong continuity of concentration on that clear light nature. One aspect, no conceptualizing thoughts. Other is the implicit understanding that this is the lack of any obstructing contact of the mind itself, the lack of any obstruction to the arisal of thoughts, and likewise, its lack of any obstruction to the leaving of thoughts. We don't have to be unhappy. What keeps us unhappy is by our dwelling on the causes of it and on the unhappiness itself. But recognizing this clear light nature, we could dispatch those unwholesome thoughts that are causing the unhappiness in an instant. We don't need to be unhappy. The fact that we can recognize this clear light nature of the mind, which His Holiness the Dalai Lama has pointed out is the conventional Buddha nature, the developmental Buddha nature, as opposed to the ultimate Buddha nature, the emptiness of the mind. This is recognizing the conventional nature of the mind, the conventional clear light nature of the mind. The fact that we can do this is due to this auspicious moment that we have to recognize that we have right now. Being born as a human at a time when the Buddha's teachings are still existing. The Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma. Those teachings are still realized by beings now. They're a community of like practitioners and benefactors. We're free of all of the impossible states to practice in, the unfree states of rebirth in hell, as a preta, as an animal, as a long life God. We're not born in a place where our very practice is prohibited, like in an authoritarian, non-religious place, or among barbarians and so forth. We have everything that we need to practice the Dharma. And recognizing that this auspicious moment can be used for worldly, what most people use it for, most worldly accomplishments, power, fame, the quest after the positive 8 worldly dharmas, 4 of the 4 worldly dharmas, wanting to have experienced pleasure, to be wealthy, to be loved and famous and so forth, and to avoid the opposites of those. Individuals that pursue those may not have a perfect human rebirth, may not have this auspicious moment because they don't have the interest in the Dharma that we have. Weighing what we can use this life for to develop Dharma realizations, imprints of them that will definitely follow us in future lives, to develop renunciation, compassion, love, bodhicitta, the wisdom that realizes emptiness. But for the aim, first of all, lowest level, for the aim of having a future happy rebirth, barely Dharma, the basic Dharma demarcation, or as an individual of intermediate scope to practice the 3 higher trainings, morality, concentration, and wisdom, in order to escape from cyclic existence, being completely tired, weary of this samsaric racetrack, or following the Buddha's advice, having heard from our holy teachers, the Buddha's Mahayana teaching, not to strive simply for our own happiness, even though it be ultimate happiness and worthy of veneration to achieve nirvana, to instead strive for a much greater goal of achieving enlightenment out of compassion for others, other beings, all sentient beings, those who have mind, who can evolve, who are now wandering within cyclic existence. They have been our mothers, our friends, our companions in numberless lifetimes, who we would have died for in some lifetimes. They've been depthlessly kind when they were mothers, kind even when they were strangers, providing the infrastructure of our lives. They were kind even when they were enemies, and giving us the chance to practice patience and so forth. They all are equal in wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering. Exactly equal with us. Understanding a little bit about emptiness, that we do not inherently exist, that we're merely imputed on this temporary basis that arose from our father's seed and mother's egg, that we appropriated as ourself and was fed, maybe first by mother, later we gorged ourself. This which we consider ourself, our temporary mind and body, is just an imputation upon that we call ourself. We could impute ourself on the entirety of living beings. Experiencing their suffering as though it is our own, their frantic states, their frustrations and fears and so forth. Just as we would want to be free of those, and we are in a position to know how to free ourselves from those and to at least begin to understand how to free others from those, we can look for the state, look to achieve the state from which we can actually affect that, to relieve the suffering of sentient beings finally, in a final way, to lead them into human rebirths if they're in the lower realms, to lead them on the stages of the path, whatever number of lifetimes it takes to set them into highest enlightenment. To do that, to alleviate their suffering and set them in everlasting happiness, we have to achieve enlightenment ourselves. And for that purpose, we have to develop bodhicitta and accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom, and engage in the bodhisattva's deeds, all of which are taught in the text that we're studying. So I think I'm going to participate. Today, as always, for that end goal, to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. I'm going to listen, contemplate, and meditate in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all mother sentient beings. Okay, thank you. So we have a nice crowd today. 24. Hi, Don. Shanka's here in the background. Yep. So before we begin, any questions? Suvash has a question or a comment.
Venerable George, thank you. I don't have a question. I just want to share something. We are talking about the subject matter has been, for the past couple of occasions, has been arising from self. And I wanted to bring your attention to a word that I was not familiar with in the English language. It is called ACIT, ASEITY. And the Merriam-Webster says it's the quality or state of being self-derived or self-originated.
Wow.
Specifically, the absolute self-sufficiency or independence. And what I want to share with you in some of the ancillary material that I was reading is that the Christians say that all phenomena are created by God. And God too is God created, for he is self-arisen. And
Right.
the German philosopher Leibniz ascribed aseity, the characteristic of aseity or self-being, to God.
Thank you for that. Can you spell it once more?
Aseity.
Oh, okay. I think the only one that I saw nodding was Diana. Anyone else know that word before? John, did you know that word?
I've come across it, but not in my regular, not in rotation.
Okay, so
I think some philosophers in Europe like to use that word when they're talking about Buddhism.
oh, okay, excellent. Okay, so I will investigate that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Sumash. That's very astute of you. Someone say something? Okay, someone's talking in the background. Hello to the rest of you. Anyone else have a comment or a question before we begin? John, you have?
Yes, hi, thank you, Venerable George. First, just a comment that appreciation. I listened to the recording because I couldn't be here last week, and I was just so impressed by some of the debate and dialogue that went on with your students, particularly around that question of whether the moments of emptiness could be the same, or whether
Right.
they were different. That was really incredibly helpful to me. I think I had a little glimmer of understanding, maybe, of what. In any case, so it helped my understanding.
Go on.
My actual question, which again is, I wanted to. Actually, this is a question that Sean asked me, and maybe he's already posed it, so I apologize if that's the case. But he asked, both of us have come across places in sadhana texts where the text will say in a certain offering, particularly Tsong, where something appears self-arisen, like a self-arisen human head.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the exact same term that's being used in our text. Obviously, it's used in a different context. And I wanted to ask about that.
Right. We may have addressed that in our discussion group, maybe that if you didn't hear it in the recording. So that's one of the expressions for that is rangjung, which is the Sanskrit Swayambhu, self-arisen, like Swayambhunath, the Supa in Kathmandu Valley. Swayambhu is not the stupa close to Kopan. What's that one called? Does anyone remember?
Bodhanath.
Bodhanath, right? Bodhanath. So in some sadhanas, when you're making the inner offering, I think we mentioned this last time, and Nadine had been asking. I think Nadine wasn't sure she could come today. It doesn't look like she's with her parents, but she had asked about that also. So say, for instance, when you're making the inner offering, preparing the inner offering out of emptiness from the syllable yam. Ya, the syllable ya is a symbol for the air element, and the M, like yam, Y-A-M, or we would say, in American, we'd say yam, right? Like yams at Thanksgiving. Yam, the the M sound comes about from a little dot above that that represents its emptiness. So from emptiness, from yam, the syllable yam appears that transforms into a wind mandala. And above that, from ram, Ra is a symbol for the fire element. From Ram comes a fire mandala, usually triangular fire mandala. And then above that, from the syllables ah, arise a tripod of heads, 3 human heads, either dry or wet, depending on the tantra. Or in some tantras, it's simply, they say, or in some practices, like in the Vajrayogini, what's it called? Kusali Sok, offering one's body and so forth. It said one visits one's guru comes back, and then upon 3 self-arisen heads, there is a tripod upon which you cut, you leave your body as Vajrayogini, your old body, you meet up with the guru, you come back, and you see your old body there, your present body lying there dead, greasy, and you cut the top of it off as a skull cup, and you put that on top of those 3 heads, and you chop up your body, the red elements and the white elements, the bones and the marrow, as opposed to the blood and the flesh, and you put them in that, and you transform them into nectar. So sometimes you say Rangjung, also there, those 3 heads arise, just out of emptiness. But that's not the same as saying Dakke, where here we're talking about self-production, meaning producing from something that the result is produced from its cause, which was of the same nature as the result. That's the difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So, okay. So Nadine is just logged on, it looks like.
Okay.
So I wanted to, as I mentioned before, this is a 1 year, what would you say? Anniversary is not the right word. The one year remembrance of the passing away of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And we will end a little bit early so that you can attend the puja that's going to be starting at 3. But I wanted to just give my own couple of recollections of my connection with Lama Zopa, one of my main gurus, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. Almost, to many of us, almost we saw them as just aspects of the same being almost. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was the disciple of Lama Yeshe, who was kind of like his Marpa. Lama Zopa said that when he was a little boy, and he always wished that he would find his guru, someone like Marpa, some kind of, really, strong guru. And Lama Yeshe took care of him at the request of Geshe Rabten from the time that Lama Zopa was a relatively young boy when they escaped from Tibet and Buxa. But I met Rinpoche in 1974 at Kopan Monastery, 26 and 24, 50 years ago. Wow. At that course, this was the 7th meditation course that several long-term Dharma practitioners attended. And I remember the first time I saw Rinpoche, I knew he was going to be leading the course. I heard the name. I had to go down the night before the course began. I had to go down to Kopan, down to Kathmandu, and a Jeep was leaving, driven by Peter Kedge, and there was another passenger. This other monk came in, I was not a monk, I was just a layperson at the time. And he looked very kind of, interesting. And it turned out this was Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who was being driven down to Kathmandu for some other reason. That was my first glimpse of him. And in the succeeding teachings, every time he would come into the teachings, it was usually in a big tent. There were about 200, 210 participants at the course, Westerners. And Rinpoche would walk in as though cutting the air with his arm like a scythe. He would walk in as though cutting the obstructions. I remember very looking straight ahead. Very charismatic, enigmatic to us then, and remained that way for many people for many, many years. Let me just mention a couple of things I'd written down here. I remember when we would get up at night during the course, sometime to make pee-pee, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning or something, we would look up toward the temple where Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche had rooms, and there would be the only ones that had lights on. We could hear conversations going on, and often incredibly raucous laughter, which is something that stuck with me. The lamas, so someone mentioned once, I think Lama Yeshe or Lama Zopa mentioned once about that if you were up very late at night, they said, "Oh, you're keeping Lama's hours," like the Lamas would be up all night. So that was something that stuck with me. The fact that these were not just sober individuals. They were someone who had incredible, love of life and humor and so forth. What was I even saying? I remember visiting, the only time I saw Rinpoche at the first course, I think, the first time I saw him, I went to ask about a pain I was feeling in my heart. And I thought it might be due to the fact that I was doing hatha yoga. Not like John does now, but so rudimentary, just in the tents that we were staying in. And I remember Rinpoche looking at me seriously and saying, "It's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. The body is subsidiary. We spend so much time in the West preening and dieting and concern about our body, but it's all in the mind, meaning the real progress that you make is all dependent upon the mind." But then later, of course, as Milarepa found the treatise that was left by Marpa for him when he came upon obstacles later in his meditation, there are certain physical exercises and so forth that are necessary to enhance the airs entering into the central channel and everything. But I remember that it's all in the mind. I remember many times coming into Rinpoche's room, either with my own question or being called up there to help him do something. And sometimes the screen next to his little cot, his little bed, would be open, and he had his arm out the window so that the mosquitoes could feed on his blood, which was then, even still, quite a spectacle, not like, not something extreme, like cutting off pieces of flesh of his body and feeding them to tigers or something like that, but actually same thought, what he can do now. Even though there was fear of malaria or something else, still experiencing that suffering with pleasure. So we can think also, I could think when I ever experienced some kind of irritation, like in one of the retreats I did at Kopan, when the flies, I thought I'd gotten all the flies out of my room before one session, out the door. And then one fly was coming around and landed on my nose and was walking around. And I thought, maybe this is my mother. This is the reincarnation of my mother. Rather than thinking, get away from me, I almost was wishing, please stay. There's some good grease over here. So seeing that, also Rinpoche many times asking, as soon as I'm about to leave the room, he say, oh, come back. Again, do something. Then waiting for some time, he's okay. Then about to leave, and then, again, come back. Sort of like the experiences on a very minor scale of, the gurus, the wrathful gurus, asking you to do tasks again and again and again. I remember one time when Rinpoche took the aspect of practicing generosity. There was a Theravada monk who was visiting to try to raise money for his monastery. And Rinpoche asked permission from Lama Yeshe to give this monk a very large sum of rupees, so that he could actually practice giving, So that's something that we can do also, to practice, to enhance the mind of giving by giving again and again. Also giving away his robe, his lower robe, his shemdab one time. I remember Venerable Roger telling me on the way to, giving to someone who didn't have a robe. And then on the way, Rinpoche was going to a teaching that he was giving. And on the way to the car that was going to drive him, he was walking and it's just his underskirt because he had given away his shemdab. So to be oblivious of that. Also, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was often I'm not sure what you would call it, in a comedy team, what would you call it? The fall guy? I can't remember.
The straight man?
The straight man, yeah. So for instance, one time I had purchased a tape recorder, what do you call it? Stenographer's tape recorder, I guess you'd call it, in order to record the teachings, maybe to learn Tibetan. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche came out of his room. I was with Lama Yeshe on the platform outside their rooms, and he was giving me some teachings, instructions about Vaitara. And I had the tape recorder there, and Lama Zopa comes out of his room kind of, not sleepy, but it's so dark in there. Suddenly he's in the sunlight, and he comes over and he's looking at the tape recorder and he said, "Oh, this is really great. This is one fantastic tape recorder. You can record the teachings." And he said, and Lama Zopa was saying, "Oh, Peter," meaning Peter Kedge, had bought a camera. What can you do with the camera?" He was going on, and Lama Yeshe looked up at him and said, depends on what you do with it, Sopa." Very stern. Depends upon what you do with it. So obviously, Lama Yeshe would, use this opportunity to criticize Lama Zopa in the front of someone in order for that person to have that is actually teaching for me. Depends on what you do with your life. You have a perfect human rebirth. Big deal. Depends on what you do with it. That's what I took from many, many situations like that. Sometimes you can't criticize someone directly, so Lama Yeshe would criticize Lama Zopa with what was meant for those who were around to hear and think, "Oh, that's that's applicable to me too. Lama Zopa was the straight guy. Lama Zopa also was known for his psychic powers, his clairvoyance, not ostensibly, but it was well known among Buddhist practitioners, even as far as other traditions. Even Han Lai here in Asheville, my friend of the Drigung Khargu tradition, said that the Drigung monks also recognized Lama Zopa Rinpoche as having psychic powers and clairvoyance. I remember once at Kopan when some people were complaining that the food was vegetarian, but the meal that was brought up to Lama Zopa at night included meat. And someone was complaining to Lama Lundup, who was the director at the time. And Lama Lundup said, yes, but Lama Zopa can fly. Can you fly? So that cut off that conversation. Once when I was in Laudo, where Lama Zopa, the region where Lama Zopa Rinpoche was born, where he had been known as Laudo Lama, a great practitioner in his previous life. I had gone up there to count the pages of the Tengyur, the collection of the Buddhist commentaries, the Shastras, that Lama Yeshe had bought for Lama Zopa, because one Tibetan layman was selling them, and Lama Zopa didn't want that person to experience the negative karma of selling the Dharma for profit. That was what that man wanted to do. So at any rate, he bought it to ameliorate that. And I had been set up to count, along with a couple of other monks, every page. So every page that was missing out of the Tengyur, we were going to dock 10 rupees or something. It was like hundreds of thousands of rupees for this. And I remember one of the other monks just would make mistakes again and again. And when Lama Zopa came up to Laudo some months later, and he was asking me how that project went, and I was thinking in my mind how I was going to say to him that Nawang Samten, Rinpoche, Nawang Samten just isn't capable of doing this. And before I could even finish my thought, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was walking, just the two of us walking in isolation during a Chenrezig retreat at Laudo, when everything is very quiet and his mind is very sharp. And he's reciting exactly what I'm thinking. He's saying, but Nawang Samten just isn't capable of doing this task. So it became clear to me that one had to be very careful with what one was thinking in the presence of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, because he knew exactly what you were thinking. I remember once in kind of the tradition of guru devotion, when Serkon Senchab Rinpoche was teaching at Kopan, he was giving the Rinchen Gyatso a series of initiations, empowerments, hundreds of empowerments. And Rinpoche took some of Serkon Rinpoche's urine from the cistern in his room and had the boys put it in the Kopan drinking water. Now, nowadays, you might think, oh, he should be arrested, that this was imperiling the health or something. But of course, it's said that in the teachings on guru devotion, it's said that sometimes people would actually drink the urine of their guru in order to receive the blessings of their holy body, almost like inner offering. So those are the kinds of extreme things that Rinpoche would do. He would also be very cognizant about karma. Once at Tushita Meditation Center, when he was teaching, and there was some renovation being done. They were cleaning out the throne upon which he sat. And underneath, it turned out there were all of these Buddhist scriptures. And Rinpoche, realizing that he'd been sitting above these scriptures, just went, like you know, I can't explain the horror in his face. You know, that what he might have been creating this karma unknowingly to denigrate the Dharma by sitting on top of it. Also, once when the 21 Tara statues were being made by one Western artist out of wax, and they had been the main Tara statue that was going to be used to cast all of the 21 had been left behind by the artist when she left in a taxi. You know, what was going to be used, what do they call it? The lost wax process. Do you know what that is? Some of you? She had left it in a box under the Bodhi tree at Kopan. And as I was walking, maybe the next day or the day after, as I was walking to the store there in the morning, maybe to get breakfast, can't remember. I saw this box, I opened it up, and I saw the statue, but various things, the ornaments had fallen off, maybe the nose had fallen off because they were all pieces of the wax that had been placed on, right, with heat. And I brought it up to Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe on the roof as they were having breakfast. And I showed to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and Rinpoche was the same kind of horror at seeing this. And Lama Yeshe said, "Doesn't matter, Sopa." You know, it was kind of both things, knowing about karma and, you know, emptiness. That from the, you know, Lama Yeshe's talking from the point of emptiness, Lama Zopa showing the horror from the point of view of karma, you know, what this might portend. Lama Yeshe's saying, doesn't matter, you know, from in the sphere of emptiness, all of these things are empty, and that's one way of purifying them. Also, when Rinpoche had recorded all of the teachings of the Dalai Lama, I believe, in Bodh Gaya on tapes, he came back to Kopan and he was about to listen to them, you know, go over again those teachings, and they were all blank. Something, you know, the tape recorder, he didn't use the tape recorder correctly or whatever. And I remember him, he was saying, my fantastic karma. You know, rather than getting angry or frustrated like I would, or finding blame with someone else, putting the blame on his own karma. You know, the fact that he wasn't able to receive these, to actually have them because of some karmic mistake that he'd made in previous lives. When we had a big problem at Manjushri Institute, the institute was being split apart by a geshe who had sort of usurped the property for himself and his own center and so forth. And there were all sorts of worries about this. And Lama Yeshe had just passed away. Lama Zopa was there. And I remember coming to him and asking, you know, how to think about this. And Lama Zopa saying, yeah, Manjushri Institute, it's impermanent. You know, rather than calling on you know, other teachings, just to remember the basic teachings, all of these things that we hold on to, even our scriptural, you know, our centers and so forth, all of them are impermanent. And one last thought, when there was a memorial to Lama Yeshe after Lama Yeshe had passed away at Tushita Center, I think they're mostly Sangha there. And Lama Zopa was telling about how Lama Yeshe had raised him, his great qualities, how Lama Yeshe, even when it looked like he was taking a nap in the afternoon, he was like Shantideva meditating on the clear light, and that he exhibited various aspects of having very, very high realizations. Lama Zopa referred to Lama Yeshe as our primordial guru, which I refer to sometimes in our motivations, our dedications and so forth. Our primordial guru, the aspect of the Buddha, the omniscient mind that has existed from beginning of this time, appearing in whatever way suits us in some lifetime, as a teacher teaching us the alphabet, or, philosophical subjects or meditation or whatever. So I wanted to share that with you before we begin. I think maybe we'll just recite the prayer for the quick discovery of Rinpoche's reincarnation at the end, rather than twice at the beginning and the end. So let's begin then. We finished last time the section on arising from self-arisen, or Dakke in Tibetan. Now we're going to begin the next section in Jinpa's translation, called here the refuting arising from other. And does anyone have the page number for those who may not have it in Jinpa's book?
I believe it's page 204.
Yes.
Page 204. And in the FPMT translation, was it 106 or something? Does anyone know? Refuting of those systems.
I have 108.
108? 108. Refuting production from other, just near the top, maybe one paragraph down, refuting production from others. So this has two parts. As general as the Tibetan tradition, they would divide things up into various sections. This has two outlines: stating the opponent's standpoint. So what does that mean, stating the opponent's standpoint? That means the non-Buddhist, the non-Buddhist and the Buddhist systems below Prasangika, who accept that things are produced from something which is either truly existently other or inherently existent other. So usually the term ngo mawa, ngo wo mawa. Ngo kind of means entity. Mawa means vadin in Sanskrit, sort of the proponent of things, meaning ngo dempar drupe mawa, the proponents of truly existent things. So that would mean the Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas and the Chittamatrans to a certain extent, but also include the Svatantrika Madhyamakas, because it could also mean proponents of inherently existent things. So that there's when it says the opponent's standpoint, so the opponents meaning people who think that phenomena, they're not arisen from self, they're not arisen from both self and other, nor causelessly, but they are arisen from either a truly existent other, like the sprout is arisen from a truly existent seed, or an inherently existent seed. That's stating the opponent's standpoint, and then refuting that standpoint. Those are the two outlines. So here, first outline, stating the opponent's standpoint. The Buddhist essentialist schools assert the following: since arising from self would be pointless, self-arising is untenable. Since that does not exist, arising from a combination of both self and others is also untenable, right? So if you doesn't make sense to have, is unreasonable, illogical, wrong to have production from self. Production from both self and others would also be untenable, because it includes something production from self, which is untenable. As for arising from no cause, this is utterly utterly deplorable and deserves to be rejected. Arisen from no cause. However, this is the opponent's position. Arising from other cannot be rejected. Other production from other, as done so as Nagarjuna had apparently done in his stanza, how from something other. Do you remember? Here it refers to verse 6.8a. I think this is Chandrakirti's rephrasing of Nagarjuna's verse. It's not produced from self. How could it be produced from something other? That was Chandrakirti's rephrasing of Nagarjuna's. And furthermore, because the scriptures state that the four conditions intrinsically distinct from their effects, inherently distinct, inherently different from their effects, are the causes that produce things, one has no choice but to accept arising from others. Does that make sense to you? Statement? KT, what do you think? That just the words. When we talk about
digesting it, contemplating, yes. Yeah, the first part makes sense, just the very last line I'm trying to understand.
Right. So, and furthermore, because the scriptures state, so this is talking about, looking in the, let's say, Hinayana scriptures and maybe other scriptures that are talking about the turning the first wheel, that the scriptures state that the four conditions are inherently different than their effects, are intrinsically different from their effects, and are causes that produce things. So the causes that produce things are these four conditions that we're going to be talking about, and that the scriptures refer to them as being inherently different from one another. Or as Venerable Jones said, because how can it be other? Because in dependence on scriptures that teach the four conditions, which are other by way of their own character, as being the producer of things, even unwillingly, one would have to assert production from others. Or as Jimpa says, one has no choice but to, even if you don't want to, if you look at it, the Buddhists, these other Buddhist traditions are saying, there's no production from self, there's no production from both self and others, and there's no production causelessly. So because things are produced, you have to, even if you don't want to, you have to accept production from others. Okay, making sense? Okay. So Jimpa's translation continues. As to what these four conditions are, some schools assert the following. The term causal condition, who knows what that is in Tibetan? Paul, you must know that. What's causal condition?
You can.
You can, right? The term causal condition refers to 5 out of the 6 causes. So here you're going to be lost. You say, oh, 6 causes? We're just talking about 4 conditions that I don't know. And now suddenly you're talking about 6 causes. What's going on? So the terminology is coming from the Abhidharma. In the Abhidharma Kosha, it talks about 6 causes that we're going to talk a little bit about. And it talks about 4 conditions. Now, what's the difference between a cause and a condition? Shankar, do you know? You there? You can't unmute.
I had the space bar anyway.
Yeah,
Would you repeat the question, please? I wasn't listening. I'm sorry.
What's the difference? Here it's talking about, the statement says, as to what these four conditions are, some schools assert the following. The term causal condition refers to 5 out of the 6 causes. So I stopped there and I said, here it's introduced 2 things, 4 conditions and 6 causes. We don't necessarily know what those are yet, unless you remember from our teachings, in tenets and so forth. So what's the difference between a cause and a condition? Generally, the word cause is hetu or gyu in Tibetan. Hetu like om ye dharma hetu, prabhava hetu teshan. I think some of you recognize that phrase, that verse of dependent arising. Hetu means cause. What is condition? Condition in Tibetan is kyen. What's it in Sanskrit, John? Do you know what condition is?
Ken. Oh, which one in
Ken.
Tibetan? Ken is Tibetan. So what is it?
What is it in Sanskrit?
Oh, I'm sorry. So hetu and what is it in condition?
I think pratyaya.
Pratyaya, yeah.
Yeah, who had said before Paul?
I think that was
Someone knows some Sanskrit. Okay, so we have hetu and pratyaya.
pratyaya. Yeah, there you go.
So 4 conditions. Shanka, what's the difference between a condition and a cause?
Well, I was thinking, okay, I guess a short answer is I'm not quite sure, but my guess, longer one is my guess is that it has something to do with when we talk about substantial causes and cooperative conditions, right?
One can
So go ahead, sorry.
So in one way, one can think of causes are things that are essential, maybe like more substantial, and conditions are often thought of as cooperative conditions. Like, say, for instance, the seed is the substantial cause of the sprout, and the water, the sunshine, the manure, warmth, the time of year, and so forth are the cooperative conditions. So they're not necessarily of the same substance as the cause. That's a little bit similar. Anna, what are you thinking?
Venerable, I was just going to suggest a friendly reminder that it might be time for you to take a break.
Yeah, let's I think today maybe I will pass that by, because we're going to end at about 10 minutes to 3. So we don't have that much time. So thanks for that reminder. If anyone else needs to take a little pee-pee break or to get a tea, feel free to do so. But I'm going to continue on right now. Okay, so what are these, as to what these 4 conditions are, because the statement above, sort of like stating the opponent's position, is that the scriptures say that the 4 conditions are the causes that produce things. So in a certain sense, conditions are causes. So the differentiation between condition and causes is a little bit indistinct there. As to what these 4 conditions are, some schools assert the following. The term causal condition, this is one of the 6, refers to 5 out of the 6 causes. So when we talk about 4 conditions, one of them is the causal condition. Let's just name them. Causal condition, the gyuken, the objective condition, which is what in Tibetan?
Mikbaekyen or Mikyen.
Mikbaekyen. It's what we sometimes refer to as the referent condition or the objective condition. Mikpa. Say, for instance, when you're talking about I consciousness. I consciousness arises as independence on various things. One of them is the object that is being observed. You could call it the observed condition also, the mikyan. So the gyuken, the causal condition, the objective condition. What's the next one here? Does he have it in, he has them in what do you call it? Slanted type. Antecedent condition. What is that?
Dematakbe kyen.
What's another way that we translate that? Does anyone know?
Immediately before.
Yeah,
The immediately preceding condition.
immediately preceding condition. Do you remember that, Stephen? When we talk about consciousness arising,
Yes, I do, Venerable George.
say, for instance, in I consciousness, you need to have an object that the consciousness is observing, that is actually going to be maybe the reflection of which is on the eye organ. You need to have the immediately preceding condition. That means a continuity of consciousness that existed just before that eye consciousness, seeing an apple, the consciousness just before that gives rise to a continuity of a similar type, previously existing condition. How does Venerable Joan translate that? Immediate conditions, say immediately preceding condition, dematakyan, and then the dominant condition. Do you know what that is, John? Maybe you're not as familiar as Paul is with the Abhidharma terms.
No, I'm not at all. But it's wonderful it refers to the big, massive translation of the Chimchen commentary.
Yeah, Chinjampeang's, yeah, Chimzo. So
if anybody else doesn't know that in that same translation series, I don't know, some of you might have seen this ornament of Abhidharma.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
I'll read a little bit from that. I have the electronic version of that. That was done by a good friend of mine that was at Sarah the same time I was there. Was it New Zealand or Australian? Australian monk, Ian. So anyway, Jimpa's going to refer to that later. So the dominant condition is, in Tibetan we say dakyen, dakboken. So these are the four conditions. So what were they? The causal condition, the objective condition, or the referent condition, the immediately preceding condition or antecedent condition, and the dominant condition. So in the case of I consciousness arising, the dominant condition refers to the organ itself, not the gross eye, but the subtle matter within the retina of the eye, within the rods and cones, subtle matter that acts as an interface for the entry of consciousness and the reflection of the object, the three coming together. Okay, so those are the four conditions. The dominant condition is the active causes as stated in the line. What is called active cause is the dominant conditions. I'm not quite sure the grammar there, why some of them are plural. 381, it's just quoting from Abhidharma Kosha. So the sixth cause, so that's the four conditions. Yeah, Richard.
Venerable, I'm not sure what's meant by causal. Let me see. Causal conditions refers to 5 out of the 6 causes, excluding the active cause. I just don't understand that.
Okay, so we haven't talked about the 6 causes. We're just about to talk about those. So of the four conditions, 3 of them we're familiar with from talking about the arisal of consciousness, because they have direct analogs in that. The 4th condition, or the first one of those four conditions is called causal condition, and that refers to that refers to most of the six causes which we're going to be talking about here. Okay, so
if it's coming up, that's fine.
yeah, it's the next line. So the six causes are, that's the next line. So we've talked about four conditions, and in talking about the four conditions, we've talked about five of the six causes. So now what are those six causes? There's a quotation from the Abhidharma Kosha. So it says treasury of Abhidharma. Treasury is how Jimpa is translating Kosha. Abhidharma Kosha by Vasubandhu. So active cause and the simultaneous, the homogeneous and the concomitant, the pervasive and the ripening cause, these are the six causes they assert. So when he says they assert, what's he referring to? Sivansh, do you know? Sivansh still here? Yeah.
I mean, they assert as in, I'm assuming this is this is what the Abhidharma Kosha says.
Yeah. So who's they that the Abhidharma Kosha is?
Oh, so in the Abhidharma Kosha is the position of the Vaibhashika, but being described from a Sautantrika standpoint. Right.
So Chandrakirti is saying, so they say, so the Vaibhashikas say. So they don't necessarily agree that this is exactly like this. So let's go over these. How does Venerable Joan translate? Acting cause. So Jimpa says, let me compare here. So Jimpa says, active cause, that's the same as Venerable Joan. Simultaneously occurring, Joan says, that's Jimpa says just simultaneous. Then congruent, Joan translates, Jimpa translates as homogeneous. Joan translates the next one as concomitant. That's also what Jimpa translates. Ever functioning, Jimpa translates as the pervasive. And the last one, fruitional, Joan translates, or Jimpa says ripening cause. These are the six causes. So what are these? In Tibetan, it says chegyu. So that's what's being translated as active cause. Che, like chepa. Does anyone know what that means? Hi, Amy. Good to see you. Paul, what does chepa mean?
Chepa usually just means to do or acting or.
Right, to act, like when we were talking about earlier, when we were talking about the chepa po, the actor or the agent, right? So chegyu is the active cause. Lenshik jungwa, in other words, lenshik jungwe-gyu. Lenshik is what Jimpa is translating as what here?
Simultaneous.
Simultaneous. What's another way of translating that? Does anyone know? Lenshik jungwa? Lenshik is what? Paul, do you know the Sanskrit?
In Sanskrit, maybe John?
Well, it can be either sahaja or it could be nija.
It's usually sahaja here. So this is the word that comes up in Tantra also when we're talking about, for instance, when you have great bliss and wisdom simultaneously there together, you could call them connate, together born. as Alan Wallace likes to translate it, or you could call it simultaneously occurring, as Joan is translated here, because it's Lenchik Jungwa. So this is talking about kind of causes that occur together, which the upper schools would not accept. Say, for instance, you, from the point of view of the anything higher than the lower schools, you can't have cause and effect occurring simultaneously, right? Or can you? Can you have a cause and its effect occur simultaneously? Karen, I noticed you were searching the Akashic records by looking up. Can you have causes and effects occurring simultaneously?
No, I can't think of any. They seem like they do, but they do not occur simultaneously.
What comes first? Cause or effect?
Cause.
Causes always precede the effects, right? So we'll be talking a little bit about that. So they're talking about the active cause, the simultaneously occurring or simultaneously arisen cause. Kelnyam, Jimpa translates as what here? Homogeneous. Joan translates as congruent. But literally, Kelnyam means what? Does anyone know? Does Paul or John, do you know?
Kelnyam, like of equal fortune, something like that?
Equal fortune, like Kelsang Getso or Jampa Kelsang. Ellen Wallace's name, Kelsang, means good fortune, or status. So you could talk about causes that are equal fortune or equal status to their effects. Generally, that's the case that has to be. So they're translating it in some kind of way that, using one word, congruent, like two things are congruent with one another, equal status, or Jimpa says homogeneous. I'm not sure how that is a very good translation of Kelnyam. But anyway, the next one is Sungpar Demba. So Sungden, we talked about many times in our Logrik class when we talked about mind and mental factors. They share 5 similarities, or Sungden Nga, 5 similarities. So here you could talk about similar causes. How did they translate it? Concomitant. They share 5 areas of concomitance between mind and mental factors. They have for instance, they have the same object, they have the same aspect, they have the same substance, and so forth. And then Kuntu Dro, which FPMT translates ever functioning, like Kundro, like when we talk about the omnipresent, and Jimpa translates as what? Pervasive, like always going. Kundudroa means always going. Like when we talk about, Snehi, do you remember the Kundronga? You remember what those are in the mind and mental factors? We translate it as the omnipresent mental factors.
Do I know what they are?
Yeah, what were those here?
What the 5 are? Feeling, contact, or contact, feeling, discrimination, intention, and attention. Wow, good, okay.
So those are always going or omnipresent in any fully functional consciousness. They'll always have at least those 5 mental factors present. So here it says Kundro or as Joan translated, Venerable Joan, ever functioning. Jimpa said pervasive, and then namin. So that means namin gigyu. So that means the cause that gives rise to maturation. Namin is what we have been translating as maturation or fruition. So when you have a cause, when it fully matures, it has a maturation effect. And what is the maturation effect of a cause? Do you know, Mikhail, of causes? What is the maturation effect?
Well, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So say, for instance, you have a cause. You created some karma. Maybe you stole some bread from the bakery. It will have various effects. It will have, what are the effects?
Yeah, I remember environmental
Effects.
And similar to the cause.
Effects similar to the cause.
Yeah. And yeah, there is a third one, I think.
Yeah, effects similar to the cause as an action, effects similar to the cause as a experience. That makes 3. And then the maturation effect.
Oh, that's the environment. Yeah.
No, the environmental effect is different, right?
Okay.
The maturation effect is what?
Oh, going to another life.
Rebirth, yeah. It refers to a rebirth. So when it's talking about here, when it's talking about causes, there is a maturation cause. That means a cause that gives rise to a maturation. Richard, what are you thinking?
I'm really having some issues with this list. The simultaneous one you already went over, but how can a cause be pervasive? Doesn't a cause, once an effect happens, isn't the cause of that effect gone? And the other one is the ripening cause. Isn't a ripening cause an effect? I'm just not understanding the terminology.
Right. So if you talk about the maturation, that's an effect. If you talk about the cause of that, you could say the particular cause of that maturation, you could label that as the maturation cause.
Right, but when would there ever be a cause that wasn't a maturation?
Oh, because there's
a maturating cause.
Yeah, because say, for instance, if the action that you did, which is going to be the cause, let's say that the karma that you created, which is going to be the cause of some effect later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Karma you created didn't include all of the factors necessary, such as the completion of the act, the object, the recognition, all of these. You don't have a path of action, then that cause will not bring a maturation effect. Right?
Okay, but it will bring some other kind of an effect.
It will bring some of the other effects, right? So the other one that's being translated as, what was the word that you were saying, pervasive?
Pervasive, yeah. A pervasive cause doesn't make any sense to me because once there's an effect, then the cause of that effect is gone, right? And
right.
I mean, then there's another effect, and there's another cause.
But we have to
see the same cause, but it's still a different cause because it's a different effect.
Right. So as Shanka very kindly pointed out, there is this book translated by Ian. What's his last name? I can't remember. Cogill, I think.
Ian Coughlin.
I can't remember. Jampa Ignan, like Yignan, like Vasubandhu. Jampa Yignan was a monk at Sarajay when I was teaching Lama Yeshe's reincarnation, Lama Usel there, and we became good friends. He he let go of getting his Geshe degree because he was being forced into going on a trip to raise money for Sarah. And anyway, he went back to the West, got his PhD. He had finished almost all of the courses to get his Geshe degree. And now he's translating texts. Very, very good translator. He married the Greek translator, Vola, who used to translate for Kriti Senchab Rinpoche. They live in Australia. So he has that translation of Chim Jampayang's great ornament of Abhidharma, which all of the Tibetans consider very, very highly. In fact, some people consider Chim Jampayang to be a previous reincarnation of Lama Tsongkhapa. That's why they say Lama Tsongkhapa didn't write a big treatise on Abhidharma because his previous life already did. So at any rate, the details about these, you can read about more details in that text, but we're going to go over it here as it's mentioned here. So at least we know the names of these 6 causes, okay? So it says, some schools, based on the statement, quote, that which creates something is its cause. That makes sense, right? You could say that which is the creator of something is the cause of that.
Sure.
Some schools, based on the statement, that which creates something is its cause. And I'm not sure where that statement comes from. But anyway, some schools, based on the statement, assert the following: that which abides in the state of its producing seed is its causal condition. We're talking about causal condition here. That which abides in the state of its producing seed is its causal condition. Or as Venerable Jones says, some sects present the definition of cause as that which acts to establish. From this, whatever abides in the entity of the seed, the producer of that, is the causal condition of that. So what does that mean? Who can I ask? Complicated if you're only seeing this for the first time. Anyone make sense of that? What is just understanding the words? Some traditions or some schools present the definition of a cause as that which acts to establish, or as Jippa says, that which creates something is its cause. It's kind of like the definition of cause, that which produces it. They assert the following: that which abides in the state of its producing seed is its causal condition. Or as Venerable Joan translates, where is it? Whatever abides in the entity of the seed. Yeah, whatever abides in the entity of the seed, the producer of something, is the causal condition of that. So here we're talking about causal condition. So remember when we were talking about the we're talking about the 4 conditions, right? We said there's the causal condition, the objective condition, the antecedent condition, or the previous condition, and what was the last one? The dominant condition. We're talking about 4 conditions. So now it's talking about these 4 conditions, now giving a little bit of explanation. And supposedly, remember the first one, the causal condition, was said to be 5 of the 6 causes. So you're going to have to juggle in your mind to keep these straight. Okay, so that which abides in the state of its producing seed is its causal condition. Or as Venerable Jones says, whatever abides in the entity of the seed, So that doesn't necessarily mean like a seed that you plant in the ground. It's this seed here is being meant as the seed that gives rise to something. Like what do we say in worldly talk? Also, we say the seed of that idea was attending the Burning Man and wherever it is in California. The seed of that idea, the cause of that idea. So it's kind of meant here. It doesn't, when the word seed in that sentence doesn't necessarily refer to a physical seed, but just to a cause, to something. That which abides in the state of its producing cause, you can say, is its causal condition. Okay, second, and just as in the example of an old man standing up, like me trying to get out of my chair, the objects that serve like walking canes for the mind and the mental factors that are in the process of arising are the objective conditions. Okay, what does that mean? Snehi, what do you think? You following? Making no sense? You're not following.
What page are we on? I'm sorry.
Oh, who can tell? I don't have the written edition.
205.
105.
205.
205.
205. Thank you so much. Sorry.
Okay. So when it's talking about objects that serve like walking canes for the mind and mental factors that are in the process of arising. So when mind and mental factors, when it says mind, that means primary mind and its attendant mental factors, right? So when we talk about its attendant mental factors, that can mean the 5 omnipresent mental factors that always accompany a primary mind. It can be other mental factors that are present. So when a mind and its mental factors are about to arise, they arise together. They have to rely on something, kind of like an old man like me, maybe putting my arm on the table to give some extra oomph to get out of my chair, or walking cane, an old person using a walking cane stick to get up. Just as in the example of an old man standing up, the objects that serve like walking canes for the mind and mental factors that are in the process of arising are their objective conditions. Or as Venerable Jones said, what does it say here? The produced minds and mental factors, actually it means the mind and mental factors that are about to be produced, which are like an old person standing up, are produced by any observed object, which like a supporting cane, which is like a supporting cane, this being their observed object condition or their mikyan. Diana.
Going back to the beginning of this chunk.
This junk or chunk?
Chunk.
Chunk.
Sir, chunk. Going back to this chunk, it uses the phrase some schools. And every time we've had that phrase, it generally either meant that this was something that was going to be refuted or that there was going to be fine-tuning of partial agreement and limited agreement. Is that the case here too?
Yes, yes. So when it's talking about some schools, so generally what we're talking about here is the position of others other than the Prasangika. So that can mean the Vaibhashikas or Sautrantikas, the Chittamatras, and some of the Svatantrikas when they're talking about causes and conditions. So they all have slightly different renditions of causes and conditions. Generally, they'll all talk about 4 conditions that we talked about, and 6 causes, but their enumeration and their explanation of them are different. Okay, so here now it's talking about one particular rendition that some schools or some sects, as Venerable Joan translated, sects rather than tradition schools, based on the statement, that which creates something is its cause, assert the following: that which abides in the state of its producing seed is its causal condition, and the objective condition or the referent condition is like the example of an old man standing up. The objects or the reference that serve like some cane to help the old person get up, they are the objective conditions. Then the next one, the final moment of the cessation of the cause is the antecedent condition of the effect that is arising. Does that sound familiar? Jennifer, does that make any sense?
I believe so, yes.
Oh, what is that? The final moment of the cessation of the cause is the antecedent condition of the effect that is arising. So when Jimpa's translation, antecedent condition, that's what we sometimes translate as what do we translate? Dhammadakyan. How do we translate that?
Immediately
preceding.
Immediately preceding condition, right? So immediately preceding condition means something, when we talk about consciousness arising, it's a previous moment of consciousness that due to its presence allows the next moment of consciousness to arise. I keep on getting that thumb up, maybe because I'm putting my, strange.
Could you repeat that again, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what the way that we usually think of it, the immediately preceding condition of a consciousness, let's say if an eye consciousness that viewing an apple is going to arise, it needs to have the organ, the dominant condition. It needs to have its objective condition or referent condition, the apple that is the image of which is on the retina. And it needs to have a previously existing moment of consciousness so that next moment of consciousness, of eye consciousness, can arise similar to that previous moment of consciousness. It doesn't have to be necessarily a previous moment of eye consciousness. It can be a previous moment of mental consciousness or some other consciousness, but there has to be a continuity of consciousness. That's called the immediately preceding condition or the antecedent condition, Jimpa wants to translate here. So this is the final moment of the cessation of the cause is the antecedent condition of the effect that is arising. So when the eye consciousness seeing apple arises, the final moment of the cessation of the cause, the immediately preceding moment of consciousness that is being ceased, that's called the immediately preceding condition. Shankar, is that making sense?
Well, I mean, the definition of the immediately preceding condition from tenets makes sense, but the apple example, the eye conscious seeing the apple, that didn't make sense.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be apple. Let's say eye consciousness seeing, blue. Okay, blue is its objective condition. The eye organ is its dominant condition, and it has to have a previously existing moment of consciousness called its immediate condition or immediately preceding condition. That means the moment, so the first moment of seeing blue has to be preceded by another moment of consciousness that's of the same entity as consciousness, that upon its, say, if this is one moment of consciousness and this is the next moment of consciousness, when the second moment of consciousness arises, what has happened to the first moment of consciousness? Is it still there? It ceased. It has undergone cessation, right? So when it says here, the final moment of the cessation of the cause meaning that previous moment of consciousness, the final moment of its cessation is the immediately preceding condition or the antecedent condition of the effect that is arising. Sounds complicated. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
What happens? Okay, so that example makes sense.
Okay.
What happens in cases where the maturation effect and the cause are separated in time, right? So if I steal something or I kill someone, maturation effect may be that I'm born in the lower realms or I have another rebirth. That's basically the maturation effect, right? So what's the immediately preceding condition there?
The immediately preceding condition doesn't apply according to the lower schools. The immediately preceding condition only applies to consciousness. But for the Madhyamaka, the Prajapika, and even some of the Svatantrika, there is immediately preceding condition of even physical things. Say the immediately preceding condition of, let's say the sprout is the last moment of the cessation of the seed. Because the seed, once the sprout has arisen, the seed has ceased, right? So the last moment of that cessation for the Prasangika and even some of the Svatantrika also applies to the immediately preceding condition. That's coming up a little later in a couple of paragraphs from here. Does that help, Shankar? That for these schools, though, the immediately preceding condition only applies to consciousness.
Oh, I see. Okay.
For the lower schools. Yeah, Anna.
Venerable, just a reminder that it's 247.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm just going to read one more sentence here. For example, the final moment of the cessation of the, for example, the final moment of the cessation of the seed is the condition immediately preceding the origination of the sprout. Generally, the lower schools say that the immediately preceding condition only applies to consciousness. So I'm not sure. I'll have to check that. So we're going to end here so that we can do our dedication prayer in time so that people can attend the memorial for the remembrance of Lama Zopa. Due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all wandering beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. And then the prayer for the swift return of Kyabje Lama Sopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, that means the Bodhisattvas, you Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, meaning Lama Tsongkhapa, father and sons, together with your lineages, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow upon us now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings, you, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings and for mother's living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. You passed away. And at this, I lost hope. I was bereft of hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the triple gem and the great waves of the bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And for all of our gurus, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, tapke we say, skill and means, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, illuminating in the sense of, illuminating the darkness of our understanding of the scriptures, illuminating spiritual friends, please live long and stable lives. So this section, maybe you feel, wow. As I looked at Snehi's kind of had her head in her hands, like, what is all of this? So if you go back, if you have studied tenets before, you can review your notes about the same things, the 4 conditions and the 6 causes. Here it's a little more detailed, and now we're also going to be talking about differences between the Mahayana and the Hinayana view of these conditions and causes. Why is that important? Because we're talking about production from other, and the assumption is the other is an inherently existent cause or inherently existent causal condition. Okay, I'll give time now for you to slip off to the other. Did the link get on, Snehi? Did you put on the link in the? So if you look in the chats, if you haven't already, you can see the link somewhere. Where is it? At the top?
Oh,
Oh, Snehi.
I had put it there, but I'll put it again now in case somebody came late.
Would you put it in an email too?
Oh, she doesn't have an email list. Who's asking for that?
No, I'm Amy.
Yeah. Someone.
I'll send you an email, Amy.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Look forward to seeing you, some of you on Monday. We can start to, having chewed these dry bones a little bit, we can start to masticate a little on Monday, and next Saturday, we can start to digest them and go on further. Thank you very much for your attention. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
You, Anna.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.